it's time to get some gardening done. Work's been really full on. I've had some appointments, which I'm not going to bore you with the details, but those of you that follow me know I have chronic migraine, so I've had my neurology appointment and I've had a couple of other appointments at the GP, and I've got some tests and things to that I'm waiting for, but nothing to worry about. But what's really good, just to, you know, take me out of my head and just chill, is to come out into the garden and get things done. So there's a few bits and pieces to do here in the polytunnel. So these peas are pretty much finished. I'm going to pull those out and take this out of the polytunnel, and that'll make room to pull these peppers forward, which are doing really well. Some of the tomatoes, they're so heavy now that I need to give them a little bit more support, a little bit of harvesting, a little bit of tidying up. And then outside, I still didn't get round to sowing into that empty bed that the onions had come out of. So I've got quite a lot of space. There's some weeding to do. The weeds are just insane this year. So yeah, I've got some trimming and tidying and weeding and hoeing and all the usual stuff, but I got a few days off to enjoy it. So let's crack on.
Before we leave it, we've heard some advice from Roger, you know, who's saying
So it's really hotting up in here. It is 35.3 degrees, so not as hot as it has been previously, but because we've had some rainy, cooler days, Whew, I'm really feeling it, and obviously because I've been working. So I've got my fan on, my solar powered fan. Oh, I'm going to sit down. I've pulled the mustard from here now, but I have chopped and saved, and we're going to keep some of those mustard seeds for growing again, but also we're going to use those for cooking. I've moved a few things around. The peas are out. I made space here, and I was going to leave the peppers there, but between the tomatoes and the peppers there's not a huge amount of room, so I've moved the peppers up here with the basil, and a couple of the other herbs are down here, and I've moved the asparagus across because this kind of gangway, if you like, this pathway was getting a bit full, and then when I bring the hose pipe I'm knocking everything over, so I've just cleared a little space. I've cleared out the rest of those lettuces that the chickens were having. Whew, it's getting really hot. And I had some caterpillars in here which have actually decimated my salads. So I've just cleared all of those, and I've chucked them all at the chickens, so the chickens can get not just the leafy greens, but they can eat those pesky caterpillars as well. So you can see I've had another nice little harvest, and I am getting daily pickings. Although I've not had the time to come out and garden, I have had the time to come out and harvest. And while I was feeding the chickens, I also noticed we have a damson tree, and it's starting to produce, so I've picked a few of those as well. And then you can see here the flower garden is really looking quite lovely, but this bed I was going to direct sow some seeds. Now I don't know about you lot in the UK or anywhere else in the world, the weeds this year have been horrendous. So in previous years it's been slugs or caterpillars from butterflies. This year my biggest thing that I've been combating has been the weeds, and I think it's just because we've had rain and sun, and of course everything that's good for growing our vegetables and our flowers is also really good for growing weeds, and they've just been crazy this year. So this bed, it's only a week since I showed it to you, and I'd hoed it right over and I'd pulled out all the weeds, but you can see it's rife again. So I'm not actually going to direct sow at the moment because it's a pointless exercise. There's an aeroplane up there, I'm sorry if you can hear it, because they're just going to get swamped by the weeds, so I'm going to have a little rethink about that. So my plan, I've just come into the shed where it's a little bit cooler. Into that bed I got some of those little globe carrots, some pak choy. Let me have a look at my list. I don't think I ever wrote it down anywhere. Let's have a little look. I know I've made a list on my phone, good old notepad, so whenever I think of something I pop it down, and sometimes I might be reading an article or watching another YouTube channel and I think, oh yes, good idea. I'd forgotten about that. So to sow, yeah, I was going to do some pak choy, some of the little carrots, some perpetual spinach, some turnips, some more spring onions, and some rocket, and I was going to direct sow that into that bed because it's a big enough bed that it could have taken it. But you know what, at the moment I think my priority has to be, and I'm going to show you the paths in a minute, is getting on top of these weeds. So I've got plenty going on at the moment, the harvests are coming in, and I just think at the moment let's focus on what I've got before I start to feel a little bit more overwhelmed than I already do. So let's just have a quick look around. So the flower bed I'm absolutely thrilled with. It's doing really, really well. Yeah, it's just been abundant this year and it's been everything I wanted it to be. This bed, as I say, is currently empty apart from the weeds. The pumpkin arch, let's go and have a little look. So these are the Jack Be Little pumpkins, and I also grew some nasturtium, and they're only just starting to climb, but they're coming, and we've got plenty of time. It's only August, so they are coming. And then we're going to go back up. I'll try not to make you seasick. Lift you up a little bit. My little water feature I'm still absolutely thrilled with. And look at this cosmos in this tub starting to come. It's just starting to flower. And what I've done this year with the flowers is I've had succession. So as one thing dies back, something else is coming. So I've got that constant colour, which is grand. Chris actually popped out and harvested some potatoes the other day, so that's just what's left over from those. He got in some potatoes and some carrots, which we had with some pork. But look at these weeds, even in the pathways. So really need, I mean, they come up really easily. Let me just show you, hold on. So they really don't take much. If you just get underneath them and give them I need to put my foot in so I'm not pulling up the membrane, and give it a shake. That's how easily they come up. And then I'm just chucking them in these tubs. But I really need to get on top of the weeds around here. So let's walk around some more. So this is the empty tub that Chris lifted the potatoes from. But I've still got another 3 tubs. I've got my teddy bear sunflowers here, which are doing okay, but again, they've been munched by the slugs and the snails. My outside tomatoes, which were volunteer tomatoes, I've been getting pickings off those. They're doing okay. And then here in these beds, again, the weeds are going bananas. But I've got beetroot in here, and then at the far end we've got the chives. And then in this bed here in the middle, I've got my squash on that side and some brassicas and an awful lot of weeds in this bed. And then in the far bed, in the hooped brassica bed, the brassicas are looking much better now that I've got on top of those weeds. So there's a couple of more weeds I can see that I've missed, so they need to come out. The strawberry bed needs a jolly good weed. The raspberries are going bananas. The obelisk over there with the sweet peas is looking lovely, but there's a ginormous thistle right next to it. So I don't know about you guys, but I know one of the things that kind of slows me down with the weeding is I have to cover the beds with this netting to keep out the pigeons and the pests. But then of course it's a bigger task, because you know when you're just walking about and you just see something, you'll just pull it. But when they're netted, it's a bigger task to pull that netting out and get underneath it. And that's the same for all of this section really of the beds, and that's why it's got a little bit away from me. But I've got some time off and it won't take long to get back on top of this little by little. And when I've got the time, with the radio on a nice day, there's nothing better than pootling about, getting up close to your vegetables, seeing what you've got going on and pulling up those weeds to chuck on the compost to make lots of lovely compost for growing in seasons to come.